education, and now you care so much about having you. I don't know. I mean, is there like a timeline for that? You know, maybe somebody
Founders in a different way, because I have been there and done that, and I'm also a sales expert.
Hi, I'm Kylie Rowe with Excellence in Reno, and I'm here today interviewing Alice Heiman. She has over 20 years of experience with Alex Heiman LLC, and you will never believe the background story she has that paints that picture of excellence for Alice's business here in Reno. Where are you from?
Where am I from?
Where were you born?
Oh, I was born in New Jersey.
New Jersey?
Yes.
Nice. So did you
I'm a Jersey girl.
You're a Jersey girl? Jersey girl.
Yeah.
So was that close to New York City? Were you
Yeah, very close to New York City. Growing up, we spent a lot of time in New York City because my grandparents were there, and we had other relatives there as well in Brooklyn and in Long Island. So we would go there frequently. We also had a lot of relatives in the Connecticut and Massachusetts area, so it's very close. It's not like Nevada where things are so spread out. On the East Coast, you can get somewhere in 2 or 3 hours, and so we would visit our family frequently.
So for how many years of your life did you live over on the East Coast?
Yeah, the first 18 years of my life, I was in New Jersey, and I spent most of that time in the same home, and it was a lot of fun. Jersey's a great place to grow up. You have the Jersey Shore, and not to be confused with the Jersey Shore Girls, that show that was really
The TV
awful.
show. I never actually saw it,
No,
but
and
I've
thank
heard about it.
goodness, because it's like Reno 911.
Right,
It's
nobody wants to be associated with that.
It's nothing like that. And so we spent a lot of time at the beach, though. And we called it the shore there. We didn't call it the beach. In the West, we call it the beach.
Makes sense.
Yeah, let's go to the shore today.
Right.
And
the lake,
yeah,
that's what we call it
that's
up here.
right. We go to the lake.
Yeah.
And have the water. So I like being around water. But anyway, that's kind of what I did growing up, and I graduated from high school there, and then I went to Indiana University.
Nice, Indiana.
In Bloomington, which is, people are like, how did you get from New Jersey to Bloomington? But long story that I won't tell you.
Okay.
But I did have some friends there, and my dad and stepmom had lived in Indiana for a little bit of time, and so I did get to know some people there, and that's how I ended up at Indiana. But it's also a very good school. And
It is a very good school.
Believe it or not, when I went to college, I was actually going to school for art.
You were an art major.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I was looking for colleges. Well, I got accepted into some art programs, and I thought, well, I should probably go to a big university that has an art program, because otherwise I'll just learn art, and I wasn't sure that was a good thing either. So I chose a school that had a great art program, and it was a big university. And so Indiana University was the final choice that I made, and I did study art, but I soon realized that I didn't know how to make a living being an artist, and
That's smart.
wasn't clear on that. So I did some soul searching and trying to figure out, and I ended up studying to be a teacher, believe it or not.
Okay, so you changed majors to education?
I did.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and so a lot of people don't know that about me, but I have my undergraduate degree in elementary ed and special education.
Oh, wow.
And then my graduate degree is in literacy, and so I learned how to teach reading, writing, and spelling, and which is odd because even back then I had this strange tie to Reno, Nevada.
Back then?
Yes,
In
and
college?
I was in Chicago. Well, it was after I graduated from Indiana University. I went to the Chicago area, and that's where I worked. And of course, a young man is what brought me to that area. He was from there, and
Love this part of the story.
he was the soccer, he was the soccer champion of our school, and he was the captain of the soccer team. I played soccer on the women's team.
You played sports in college?
I did.
Awesome.
Yeah. But that was back, around Title IX when women's sports weren't really, so we were not a varsity sport. We were
Gotcha.
a club team. But what I'm so excited about that is that I worked hard with the other women on the team, and the year we graduated, the next year it became a varsity sport. So it had an impact on that.
Left an impact.
Yeah.
So, okay, when you graduated from undergrad, did you spend time in the classroom before you went back for your master's degree?
Yeah, well, actually
Okay.
what happened is I got a teaching job, and I started teaching, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. Oddly enough, even though I had taken, teacher training and done my practicum and my student teaching. And I think it's like a lot of jobs, not just in education, but you graduate from school and you get a job, and how do you really know how to do that job? So I was just thinking to myself, I have to go back to school. But the main thing I felt like I didn't know how to do was teach the kids how to read. And so that's what I went back to school for, and that's where the odd tie to Reno came in. So I got very lucky and got accepted to an excellent reading program. And the professor there was studying with a professor here at the University of Nevada. And he is a very well-known professor, Donald Baer. In fact, he's internationally recognized, and he set up the literacy program here.
Wow.
And so I didn't even know at that time where Reno, Nevada was, but I was already tied to it. Odd, isn't it?
That is odd.
How things happen.
Very strange.
Yeah, so then I taught for a number of years, and we'll kind of fast forward. So, otherwise this video is going to be 3 hours long.
A million years long.
Yeah, and so I was teaching and really enjoying that, but see, the thing is I'm really an entrepreneur, as you know. And so I can't help myself from starting things like the soccer team at the university and other things that I've started in my life. I'm just a catalyst. I always want to start something. And while I was teaching, I figured out that there was these gaps that no one was filling. And, that's what I did. I decided I was going to fill the gaps. So I started a business, and it was just like I was doing it out of my home, and it was about children's books and how you could use them in the classroom. And I wrote this extensive newsletter, and everybody was saying, oh, you should make this into a business. And at the time I was like, oh, okay, well, how would I do that? And we didn't have the internet back then, so you couldn't just like look it up and figure it out. I had to call around and find resources, but I did turn it into a business. I call this my MBA. Even though I have a master's degree, it's not an MBA, it's in education, but I wrote a business plan. I got it funded. I opened my resource center for parents and teachers, and that was my first business that I did. Yeah.
And was that based in Chicago, or where at the time were you living when you did
that? At that time, I was already in California.
Okay.
So I spent about 3 or 4 years in the Midwest after college. But my whole family had migrated, believe it or not, from New Jersey to California.
Okay, so just your family.
Yeah, so there's 7 of us, and everybody had my dad and his wife and their 2 kids, and then my other siblings. So I was like, oh, I'm the only one who's not there. So I decided I would move to California as well. So that's where I was at the time, and I was teaching, and I was also speaking nationally at conferences about the landmark work that I was doing in the area of teaching children how to read. And I had also invented a reading program at that time called Songs I Can Read.
Songs I Can Read,
yeah.
Nice.
And kids loved it, and it was really awesome. And I should still publish that. I never did go all the way with publishing that and everything. But anyway, I started the Resource Center, got a board of directors to help me. And my mom and my friend's mom were my helpers in the store while I was teaching, because I was still teaching at the time. And it was awesome. It was like Christmas every day there, because we'd get big shipments of books and resources that we wanted to share with everyone. And we would open them up and place them around the store, and it was really fun. We had a big center for training, so we could train teachers, we trained parents, and we also worked with kids who had reading difficulties. So it was really fabulous. And then I learned a really hard business lesson.
What was that?
That you have to make a profit.
Oh.
And this is something I think a lot of entrepreneurs miss.
Right.
But this was my first foray into a for-profit business, and I wasn't making a profit. And my board said, you just can't continue to pour your savings and yourself into this business and not make a profit. What do you want to do? And I didn't really want to go borrow more money, and I learned a lot, but I didn't know, of course, everything that I know today about a business. I could have made it work, but I didn't know how. And so sadly, and it was so sad, but that's what we do. We learn as entrepreneurs, so we closed the business.
So what did you do after that? I mean, what was your experience like? Were you kind of down from that, or were you ready to just pivot and do the next thing?
I thought I was going to die, honestly. I felt like my guts had been ripped out. It was awful. I felt horrible. I didn't want to close the store, and I was in tears a lot, and it was a horrible experience having to do that. But I didn't know that it was something that had to be done, because I had a board. I was smart enough to have assembled a board who looked right at me and said, this just isn't going to work. This business model isn't going to work. Now, there were a lot of reasons. For example, that is the time of Barnes & Noble.
So you were
and the big Barnes & Noble down the street, and all of the independent booksellers were going out of business. It wasn't just me, because I was in a group with other independent booksellers. So that part was hard, and then the rest of the business model, it just wasn't far enough along to support itself, and I was having to work 2 jobs because I had to run that business and teach. It was just too hard. And I had a baby.
Okay.
Right. A little tiny baby, which I had been planning for, and he hadn't been coming, and then as soon as I opened my store, guess what? I got pregnant.
Of course.
So yeah,
Life
trying
happens.
to do too many things at once, that's the way it is. We shut the store. And then after that, I really thought, wow, do I want to go back to teaching full time, or, what do I want to do? And my dad and stepmom had a company that was growing, and they really needed my help.
Right.
Miller Heiman, of course, a lot of people know about that. And they had moved that company here to Reno, Nevada.
Of all
Imagine
places.
that.
Right.
And so I came to help them with that business instead of going back into education. And that's how I got catapulted into the big world of business and the world of sales, because they were selling to all the Fortune 500 companies at the time. And so that was big.
So what year did they start Miller Heiman, and when did it move to Reno, and how long has
Yeah.
Miller Heiman been in business now?
A long time. So my dad and his partner Bob Miller started Miller Heiman in the late 70s. I was still in college.
Okay.
And they were already in California, and I was in Chicago, or I was in Indiana at the
Right.
time. So they started it in San Francisco and worked and built the company, and just went really well. They published the book Strategic Selling, then they published Conceptual Selling, and then in the next book and the next book, and they were just doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
All the Fortune 500 companies were using their sales training, so that was phenomenal. And then my dad bought his partner out around 89, and then at that time he and his wife said, well, gosh, we don't need to stay in California. As we all know, it's sort of a hard state to do
Our
business
business
in.
climate.
And so Edon got involved.
Yeah.
Somehow, I don't remember exactly how, but they
Okay.
were, looking around for places, and they looked at some other states too, but Reno captured their hearts, and they, of course, loved the tax structure here.
Right.
And so they moved the business in 1992
92 they've been
to
in
Reno. And then I, 2 years later in 94, decided to come work with them and help them grow the business.
So your role with the business was you're implementing the Salesforce program. What's the program
so
called?
at Miller Heiman, what we did was trained large sales teams, and so
Okay.
we taught them the strategy and the tactics to really position themselves well and then execute on a sale, especially where there were what we call a complex sale with multiple buying influences, high dollar stakes. And lots of complications to the sale.
Okay.
And so the Fortune 500 companies were the ones that really needed this kind of training. And so I was
You were traveling around the country,
traveling a
training
lot,
people.
training, and I was training the trainers. And I got to work with amazing companies like Coca-Cola,
Wow.
Hewlett-Packard, AT&T, Fidelity Investments, Dow Chemical, lots of big, amazing companies, and I learned a lot about corporate America. I mean, I went from teaching little kids,
Right.
elementary school, to teaching big kids how to sell in a big way.
So how long were you doing? How many years were you in that role with Miller Heiman?
Yeah, I worked with them for about 3 years,
Okay.
and then I knew my parents wanted to sell the company, and that's one of the reasons I had come to work with them and help them grow it. And they were working at selling the company. And I decided I wanted to go off on my own for many reasons. One of them is it's not really that easy to work with your family. I don't know if you've ever done that before.
It can be very challenging.
Yeah. And so I thought, I'm going to spin off on my own and do some similar things, but not, and stay affiliated, but really have my own business. And then I also knew they were trying to sell the business, which that was great for them, and I wanted them to be able to do that. So some of my other siblings were working in the business as well at the time. So I spun off in 1997
97.
and
okay.
started Alice Heiman LLC,
Perfect.
and was still working with them and working with some of these giant companies. But that was the .com time. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're kind of young, maybe.
I
you
am kind of young.
don't.
No, I remember. I've been hearing a lot of stories from people about the .com.
The .com, which they
time.
then called the .bomb.
The .bomb, right?
Well, these venture capital companies were throwing money right and left at these .coms, and they were throwing that money away. They were doing crazy things like building these beautiful, amazing spaces, which were awesome, but not helping them get any sales. It was an interesting time because the people from these really big companies were leaving, like GE Capital, they were leaving Coca-Cola, they were leaving Fidelity Investments, big companies, and they
To
were
go.
going to these, we didn't call them startups back then, we called them .coms.
.coms.
And I got
Interesting.
lucky enough to get called by these senior executives and say, hey, we need some help. Does Miller Heiman do that? And I'm like, well, Miller Heiman doesn't do that, but I'll see if I can help you. So I learned how to start up a sales team from scratch and how to really help a small startup, come into its own with the sales team, because they had a founder and they had a couple of people and they had a space and some money
Right.
and a product. And they were doing a lot of product development, but they had to actually start selling that product. So that was a lot of fun. And that's how I really transitioned from Fortune 500 companies to small companies, which is who I focus on today. And I love working with startups. I love working with the founders of companies, the person who got the idea originally and who never really thought about selling when they started their business. They never really thought they were going to have to sell, or maybe some of them did, but they still don't know everything they need to about selling. And even if they came out of corporate America with some sales background, they don't know how to set up sales for their company. So those are the kinds of companies I love working with, that I work with today, and I love digging in and getting their sales set up so that they can really be highly successful.
Wow, so you've been very successful in your business. You've been doing this for 20 years. You're helping other people be successful. So what is it, Alice, that you could say where you want to go in the future? So do you have a goal for your business, or where do you want to what project or program do you want to tackle next?
Yeah. Well, what I'm tackling, I'm actually doing what I want to do next, and it's really important to me to help lift these business owners up, whether they call themselves a founder or a business owner, but these people who are starting companies or who have companies and they're not getting where they want to be. I really want to ensure their success. So my big project right now is my book.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know.
Yes.
I'm so glad this is coming out in the video.
And this book is for company owners who don't know much about sales.
Perfect.
Right? And that's what they need, because a lot of them are engineers or operations people, or they invented something, but they really need to understand sales and what the proper channels are for them, and how to hire salespeople and how to set their sales up. Because that is one of the major points that they're failing on. They get some investors because they have such a great idea.
Right.
But they don't have their sales and marketing plans solid enough to really get their product out there. And then comes the tough times, money's not flowing in, investors getting angry. They've got to learn how to sell. So that's what I want to do, is help them do that. And this book will help them. And then, of course, I've been booking a lot of speaking engagements to get out in front of these.
All across the country,
all across the country, and talk about this,
So are you done writing it? When is it done? When's it coming out?
Yeah, I'm done writing it. The editing part is so painful.
Really?
I had no idea how hard it was going to be. To write a book was not the hard part. The editing part is hard, because you really got to smooth it out and get it exactly the way you want it, and make it readable for people so that they want to start reading it and keep reading it. So you got to get their attention. So I'm working on that. Yes, I'm looking at August as the book launch. We're actually have already been planning our book launch, and we're going to be starting to drip little pieces of the book out there, and we'll be having interviews with different media sources to talk about our book, and I'll be doing some speaking engagements. I'm getting excited.
That is really exciting. Well, we're looking forward to reading your book, and we'll be sure to tune back in with you so that we can hear how that's going.
Great.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, so that's a wrap for the interview with Alice Heiman. Thank you, and stay tuned for 5 questions that explain excellence and how Alice Heiman brought her business to where it is today.